I want to do a clean transition there, but then I had like something in my throat. I guess this is now the cold open. I gotta stop. Like, I guess we don't do it often, but you can't self-reference the cold open and then have it be a cold open, even though I am almost certainly going to do that right now for this. Anyways, hello, yes, welcome back to the Lil Res podcast, also known as the Relaxing Environmental Soundscape podcast. It is 45 degrees today and windy, although it is also super duper overcast. I can't see the sun at all. It's that gray. I don't know what you'd call it. It's just gray. Um, Here's the
Oops,
gnocchi
all
of the
gray.
day, wherever it is on the screen. It's just her laying down. This is a true gnocchi of the day. I took it right before setting up, or I took it while I was doing the setup. So this is minutes ago, fresh gnocchi content. The
It's
hat
like
of the
we're in
day.
Rome. It's like we're in Rome. The gnocchi's so fresh.
Yeah, exactly. There's no hat of the day because I didn't feel like it. We were talking about this a little bit while we were getting started when we were setting up. The outfit I wear on the Lil Res podcast is not actually how I dress. It's an outfit I literally put on for the podcast and then take off after the podcast. How I'm dressed right now is how I'm usually dressed at home, a little bit more relaxed. Um, and I just didn't feel like changing today because it's the relaxing environmental soundscape episode. So we got to be relaxed. They can't see you,
Mm,
Richard, but you also look very relaxed.
very.
How are you doing today, Richard?
Um, like you mentioned, I'm very relaxed. I'm coming off of a nap. And also, in contrast to our last episode, I feel like we're both coming in just very, very subdued, very like
Mm-hmm.
there's no negative energy.
No,
We're just like there's no Chicago deep dish story coming out of this intro
I
today.
don't think so. You never know.
Yesterday
Yeah.
yesterday we were or not yesterday, last week we were just so antsy to just like share all this information.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this week we're like, yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it.
Yeah, yeah. I when I listened back to the episode last week, it was interesting because I feel like from a viewer perspective, it didn't feel as hectic as it felt in the moment. Um, because one thing I realized is that the viewer is not like trying to keep track of like the flow of conversation in the same way that we are. I think we don't like leaving things unresolved. And so it felt like we kept stacking topics and then having to like actively reel ourselves in to resolve them, but it doesn't actually change the experience of the podcast that much. Because like
Yeah,
when I listen to podcasts, I'm not thinking like, all right, here's the outline of the structure or whatever, things just flow from one place to the next. Um,
totally.
but man, experientially, I still remember being like feeling so like just like wired.
Oh man, just like that time that you downed a packet of G Fuel.
Oh my gosh. Okay, there's some people who we'd need their consent to share that video. But I would love to share that video because that is the most like for context, there's a video of we went to PAX, the Penny Arcade Expo, like 5, 6, 7 years ago or something. There was like a G Fuel booth. Could you hear that? Sorry, Gnocchi's food just got dispensed. I don't know if you could hear that in the background. Um,
I could hear it. That's
there
awesome.
was G Fuel, and I don't drink like caffeine usually. I'm not like it's not something I avoid or anything. I just don't. Um, but G Fuel is like a fun gamer novelty, and when you're at like PAX, you're like in gamer mode. You're just ready to lean into it. We went to the PC free play section to just play some games, and we had just gotten the G Fuel, and I had filled like a water bottle filled with like a G Fuel packet or whatever one unit of G Fuel is. And we get to the entrance after standing in line, and the staff member is like, "Oh, you can't bring in a drink. If you want to come in, you got to throw that away or drink it right now." And I was like, "All right, I'll just drink this entire G Fuel all at once." So I chugged it and then we went in. And I felt like I've never done cocaine, but I felt like I was on cocaine as someone who does not drink caffeine. And if you look at the video,
Uh,
I'm not faking my reaction. I'm not exaggerating it at all. That is that is we'll see. I'll at least include a screen cap of when I'm in the video. I look like my heart is about to beat out of my chest. That's genuinely how I felt. I've never been more wired in my life. Um,
um, that's actually a surprisingly good transition to your theory about last episode's performance. In
in
the
a weird
conversation
in a
topic.
weird way it is. Um, Here, I'll quickly say how I'm doing, but we don't need to be too
Perfect.
prim and proper about it. I'm doing well. I've been feeling good. It's been interesting. I've felt very productive, but not in a very targeted way. I've been letting myself a little more freely not work on video stuff if I feel like I have energy elsewhere, which I feel a little guilty about. It's something that definitely bothers me because I'm like, oh, but like I'm supposed to be making videos. And it's not like I feel like I'm shirking. It feels like it's a calculus of like, what is the most effective way to leverage my energy right now? But I do wish that energy was directed towards the video. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, if I'm doing stuff, that's good. And I think it's kept my mood up because I've been in motion, and I haven't felt stuck or anything.
You're
Um,
keeping momentum going.
yeah, keeping momentum going. The other projects, I think we'll talk about them at some point. I think it's a little early, a little personal. I have a personal project that you don't even know about, and I won't tell you about because it's personal. It's like self actualization personal. It no one will ever see it but me. Uh, so I'm not gonna. That's already too much. I've made it too enticing by saying how forbidden it is. The point is, we have like journals and stuff, things like that, that we do to understand ourselves. The other one is something that very well may be public that you're actually working on as well, Richard. But it's a little
Hmm.
premature to share that, I think. I don't.
Wait, is your self-actualization one related to your fit today?
Is
The
it
mood
really?
board?
It is not related to my fit today. That is a
Okay, so that's a
separate
different
project,
project.
but that hasn't taken up a lot of time. I want to rework my wardrobe, and so I've been building up a mood board and stuff. Um, but yeah, that hasn't been time consuming. That's just like, oh, I see an outfit, I just screen cap it and put it in. No, the other one, honestly, I don't think I'll ever tell anyone about it. Not even not even you. But it's I'm making this sound so forbidden. It's really not. I just like document my thoughts and stuff basically. And I'm trying to be more systematic about it. I think I made it sound too. You can't say something and be like, and you can't see it, right? That's that's not a good way of going about doling out information. But I think. All right, now I'm just rambling. The point is, it's not a big deal. I made it sound like a big deal. Um,
Fair enough.
you were talking about uh, the theory. So initially, I didn't want to talk about this on the pod because I didn't want to sound like we were whining. The last episode did not perform well. It's actually the worst performing episode so far. Um, and I was like, all right, that's unfortunate. Maybe the demand for the podcast isn't where I thought it was. I didn't want to talk about it on the pod because I didn't know why it didn't do well, and I didn't want to sound like we were just, you know, being like, oh, we deserve more attention or something like that. But then today, like an hour ago, I actually bothered to check the YouTube analytics, and that episode got fucking, this is a keyword here, demonetized. And it all made sense because YouTube doesn't push videos that are demonetized. And if you look at the analytics, the algorithm based traffic is dramatically down, and YouTube just did not promote the video basically at all. Um, and I believe it's because we swear very early into the podcast.
Mm.
So that's a rite of passage, having your podcast demonetized for the first time. I now know the impacts of that. I'm gonna censor that one and re-upload it with this one when it comes out. But the episode's up right now. I guess this it doesn't matter. I'm saying that no one's hearing that until the new version will be up. But we'll see if that changes things. But I mean, like it's YouTube transparent about it. It says limited monetization. They're not hiding it. I'm not reading tea leaves here. So yeah, they don't ever tell you why really, but they do tell you it's demonetized. So
Yeah, and that's why with the or the segue I said earlier, I wonder if it will pick up on the fact that you said a drug
yeah, I said
earlier.
cocaine. I said
Yeah.
it again. Yeah, that's. I guess we'll limit tests and we'll see. I think you can mention drugs. Uh, Maybe I don't know.
It's the
um,
black box of YouTube.
yeah. Just navigating the policies. Okay, let's get topical for a second. I don't want to linger on this for too long because it's its own can of worms. But the Huberman article came out. For those who don't know, Andrew Huberman is a Stanford professor who, over the pandemic, started a podcast and other like social media outlets or outputs about basically self improvement. Is there another way of putting it? Is self improvement? I guess that's probably the
Self improvement and like not he doesn't like the word biohacking, but like understanding your body's biological processes
right,
and
right,
how
right.
you can optimize them to to improve aspects of your performance slash life.
Yeah. Very, I would say, bottom up oriented self improvement, looking at the mechanisms of how your body works and how you can optimize those things. He did that over the pandemic, got very, very famous from it. And then this week, an article came out from NY Magazine and The Intelligencer that basically detailed a lot of different things, but most damning of all, the fact that he's a serial cheater and one who did his cheating in adultery through like heavy leverage of like deception, manipulation, stuff like that. Because it's one thing to cheat, lots of celebrities cheat. It's another to cheat in a way that is like very premeditated and deceitful.
He cheated in a way that someone of his like mindset like would cheat. Like it's just very calculated, very control based,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
like it was like in line with his general MO of body biohacking. It was
Yeah. Yeah,
honestly
it
very
was
interesting.
uncomfortably optimized.
Yeah.
Like he did the thing. I've heard this in other like celebrity cheating stories before, but he did the thing where like he would send the same style of messages to different women or like send the same selfies to like different women at like the same time. Um
Mm.
there's other stuff that's I think even worse. Um like for example, uh yeah, I guess the demonetizing thing is kind of interesting. It's making me think about how much detail to get into. I won't stress about it too much, but he convinced multiple women to have unprotected sex because they thought the relationship they had with him was monogamous, which is like a level of deception that's entering. Oh, and one of the women contracted an STD. That's a level of deception that's like you're putting people's health at risk at that point. It's quite cruel. Um,
And the IVF as well.
yeah. That you should really read the article if you're unfamiliar with the situation. But it's a lot of stuff. But the whole of it is like he presents himself as a almost like a perfect person, not literally, but that's kind of the aura I think he gives off. And this narrative, and I don't mean narrative as like a. Sometimes people say narrative as a in a dismissive way. I just mean like this string of facts presented as a narrative really pushes back against his public persona. I wanted to bring him up today because he it reminded me of what I think of as the I wrote it as the infallible human being, which is a genre of human that I tend to not trust or carry heavy skepticism for. And reading takes online, it seems like this is pretty. A lot of people felt this way. Um, but basically, the idea boils down to I simply do not believe that people can be infallible. And I don't just mean that in that like people are infallible. How to put this? Andrew Huberman would frequently admit his faults, but he admitted his faults in a way that was very controlled, right?
Like a
Something,
way you would do during an interview. Like in the
yes,
episode about addiction, he would say, "Oh yeah, like I'm addicted, but I'm addicted to work. I'm addicted to like something that like society rewards." Like this is
yeah,
like almost verbatim what he said.
yeah, or like faults that he can also immediately say, but I've grown from or something. And I think fallibility is beyond just having faults you can point to, but the fact that you are truly not in control of your life or of the world. Obviously, there are many things we do have control of, but I think fundamentally no individual person has it, quote unquote, all figured out, flaws or not. And when people present themselves like they do, to me, it always means, without being conspiratorial, it always means that something is not being honestly conveyed. Um, it's something I worry about with my depiction of myself online a lot, because I really, really do not want people to see me as like uh, the be all end all authority on really anything, even the stuff I feel I have the most expertise in, i.e., like learning. Because I just think that I can't have all the answers. I can't even have what I truly believe is a semblance of all the answers. I just have like my individual perspective that is inherently going to be wrong in some ways. All models are wrong. Um, and so I that's how I hope people would perceive me, and that's how I try to perceive other people. I'm always thinking, right, this person, no matter how much authority, no matter how much expertise they have, there's some stuff that they're not going to know, and that's fine. That's how everybody is. But if your portrayal of yourself resists that factor, I feel like it's inherently a little bit dishonest. Although that doesn't mean it's malicious. There's a lot of reasons why somebody might do that. Um, and it doesn't mean that the things you're hiding are terrible things either. It just means that something isn't being factored into this equation. Um, yeah, I guess that's most of my thoughts there, Richard. Was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, well, actually, speaking of Factor, our new video spot. No, sorry. So yeah, my take, and I definitely completely agree with that. I remember when because being on the podcast is very new for me,
Hmm.
and I don't ever make anything that's like public facing. I remember, I think if you were to go back and listen to earlier podcasts, and in honestly in the newer ones too, I think I over not critique, but take like middle ground stance or whatever, or like
Mm-hmm.
I'll put conditionality on stuff because I'm also afraid of that as well. Like I'm a very imperfect person, and yeah, the Huberman story, like I I find it so interesting because the reason why he kind of got into this mess is I think largely, and I don't want to like armchair like analyze too much,
Mm-hmm.
but because I think a lot of it stemmed from him just like really always trying to control everything. And
Yeah.
this is like a a, a tale that probably goes back to like Greek tragedies and stuff. Like the person that tries to like control everything ends up like controlling nothing type deal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like uh that's one of the things I like really enjoy about like East Asian like literature and like a lot of philosophy is it's like it's a lot of vibes based because it's
Yeah.
pretty aware that you can never control everything. At best, you can just have like tools and frameworks for like riding the wave
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It made me think. What you're saying. It's basically what I said earlier, but like your faults. Everyone is flawed. Um, but even more importantly, your flaws are not always going to be, how do I put this, satisfying. You're not going to be able to tell satisfying stories about your flaws all the time. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
not going to make sense. Sometimes it's not going to have a nice ending or resolution. it's just like you know, the chaos of the universe flows through us, and we desperately try to make sense of it so that we can live with ourselves. Um,
Yeah.
that's
The
like
key is
very
just trying
flowery,
not
but
to the key is trying not to give too much into your flies that you end up on r/public freakout at the end of the day.
um, yeah, I actually wrote, yeah, the Patreon post I wrote earlier today was like about this, about like I don't like, I feel really uncomfortable when I share like my workflow and stuff because I have so little control over how mistakes happen when I'm doing like a showing like real time what I'm doing, right? So I wrote the post about like working on some graphic design for the video. Um and I just like tried to take screenshots as I was working. Um, but when you're working, if you make a mistake and somebody's observing or you're making it visible to somebody, it's not like you can cover it up and hide that that happened, right? In real time, it happened. They saw it, and it's really not a big deal. But for whatever reason, we all have our weird reasons for being how we are. That idea makes me squeamish. Like somebody seeing the inefficiencies of my process, somebody seeing like the weird things I do, because we all have little quirks in how we work. And I don't even think I fully articulated them in the Patreon post, but that makes me uncomfortable. But it's something I need to confront because those inefficient, not inefficiencies, I don't think is the right word of putting it, but the weaknesses or the ways I could get better in my process are things that I need to see, and I need to be able to show to other people so that they can tell me how they can be better too. I can't be the sole person who figures out all the ways that my work needs to be improved. So the post was like an exercise in like, all right, I basically never show my workflow except in postmortems where I can already tell a nice story about what happened. So what's an attempt at like capturing a more in situ, would be the science word, in the situation description of my work process.
Hmm. This probably exists already because I am merely just a rehasher of existing concepts in sometimes
We
humorous
all
ways,
are
but
though.
like, yeah, it's true. No one ever has an original idea. But it there should be something like it reminds me of like Wizard of Oz or something like Wizard of Oz symptom where you're afraid to show like
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
little workings behind the scenes that you're going on, and you only want people to see the it's not well, facade sounds mean, but like the
No,
facade that you're
that's
putting
how
up
I feel
basically.
though, right? I always feel
Yeah.
like um just from like my own individual insecurities or whatever, that like I always I got, I'm I'm normal. I got imposter syndrome. Just like everybody, not everybody, but like it's certainly common, and I'm certainly one of the people who has it. And yeah, I feel like I'm putting up a facade when I work, and like the output I can control, but like man, the workflow can be so ugly sometimes to get what looks like a clean result. Um yeah, it's like totally irrational. But it's how you feel. It's like funny, right? Like I'll be like, "Oh, I feel a weird shame that it took me like 5 iterations to get this very simple graphic." That's literally how design works. That is, and I know this very intimately because I've done it a lot. But that's just how. But even still, my brain's like, no, the person needs to believe that you got it on the first take, first try, and you did it in 15 minutes, and it didn't take any effort at all. When in reality, it's like, ah, I don't know what to do. I'm looking for references. I'm moving things around. Oh, I don't like this. Swap in, swap out. Something about that I wish felt more comfortable to share, because we'd all be better learners if we felt more comfortable sharing that kind of stuff.
You like it's like you watching other designers iterate. You're like, "Oh wow, that's so cool how they take that like doodle and make it into
Yeah,
like
yeah.
something meaningful." You watching like yourself iterate, you're like, why can't I just have it?" Like,
Yeah. Speaking
ah,
of since the topic today apparently is fallibility, I have a great tie-in with an activity that I wanted to do today. So, what was it? Was it last week? Last week was TikTok ranting, right? Yeah, last week. So, last week I made a claim. I made a claim which was that I started substituting my social media usage with TikTok, right? The implication being that I spent less time on Reddit and Twitter since integrating TikTok into my app usage. After the episode, I thought to myself, is that actually true? Or am I
Mm.
just using my phone more? So I went in my screen time, and I took the past month of screen time data and I charted it. So I've sent you a link, Richard. For
Yep,
viewers, I'll put
looking.
these charts on the screen. We don't have a screen sharing setup quite yet, and I'll also look at my phone to refer to this. Let me know when you have it open.
Oh, it's
Um,
open. Yep.
the TLDR is that it wasn't really a substitute. I for the most part it was additive. But let's walk through these charts. I think a good place to start would be the stacked bar chart. Do you see the tab there, Richard?
Yep. Yep. I'm
So
I'm
this is a
looking at it
nice way
right
to
now.
visualize just the total screen time usage. Um, as you can see, Reddit holds pretty freaking strong, and it's definitely the bulk of the social media usage. It's not tremendous. On average, it looks like the daily is around an hour and a half of Reddit each day, which I think is not too bad. It's funny, one of those days, do you see the huge bar around March 16th?
Yep.
Yeah. I okay, so that was 3.5 hours
Half
of
hours.
Reddit.
Yeah.
And on the screen time app on my phone, it was a continuous block, 3.5 hours straight of Reddit. It was at like 10 p.m. until like 1:30 a.m. or something. I genuinely could not muster a single memory of what that was about, but I can tell from the pattern that it was a deep dive. It has all the hallmarks of a deep dive. I found something that I thought was interesting and I just sucked up all the information I could about it. I genuinely I cannot tell you what it was about. I have no
uh,
memory whatsoever. Um but it's
I
funny
am
to see
so
that like
curious what
giant spike.
subreddit.
Yeah, I wanted to know. I was like, what sucked me in 3.5 hours? Like that's a lot of time to just focus on something straight. The other plausible theory is that I accidentally left my phone open on Reddit. But you would expect it to like go to sleep or something, right? I don't think that
Right.
I think it was active usage. But yeah, I'm not sure what it is. If we look at the line graphs a little bit, I've made the graphs so there's the normal line graph, but we'll also have some focused views. So we'll look at the Twitter focus. There's actually a pretty reliable downwards trend on Twitter usage. I think my dislike for Twitter growing over time has genuinely pushed me away from opening the platform to the point where I think at some point a connection was made where I went, oh, this makes being on Twitter makes me not happy. I don't want to be on Twitter anymore. But that trend happens before TikTok is really in play. So I don't think TikTok did anything to lower that. Yeah, if you look at the Reddit focus, the trend line, not that these are like real legitimate trend lines because the data isn't really good. But yeah, Reddit holds strong. And then TikTok just kind of goes up. And I'm consuming it in bursts. Like some days it's a
Mm.
lot of TikTok. Some days it's not really very much TikTok at all. Although it does kind of have a nice like 1 hour. I would say it's like 1 hour is probably the sweet spot for me. I get a little bit bored after an hour, I think, unless I'm like really onto something good.
Well, how long are TikTok videos? 1 hour of TikTok is like how many different videos? That's a
It's
lot of
yeah, I
videos.
guess it'd probably be 50-ish videos. If you include the skips, probably like 100, 150 maybe.
So you've evaluated 100 plus videos and you've context switched like 50 plus times in 1 hour.
Yeah.
And that's not exclusive to you. That's how everyone
No,
uses
no,
these
I know.
apps.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like 1 hour, like both seems like a lot and a little in that regard. Like it's hard to
Yeah,
judge because
it's
we're not used to
interesting.
dealing with content like that as humans. It's probably not super well studied yet.
Yeah, yeah. TikTok is I so there's I think he's a psychologist. what is his name? Jonathan Hackett, Haddon, something like that. He wrote the what is it? The coddling of the American mind or whatever that book is. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
I
Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Yeah, that's a good one.
yeah.
Jeff
I'm
Binkley.
not really a fan of his work. He says a lot of things that are true and very empirically proven, and then goes on to make like uh, conclusions that I don't think make any sense. And he's very against social media, and he's very pro TikTok ban. But I like really struggle to follow the line he goes from like, yeah, these studies say it's bad to like, so we need to ban the technology. Um, I'll elaborate that on a little bit because I don't want to be baseless in my disdain. So he'll say something like, "We very reliably understand from research." Um, reliably has a little asterisk there because, well, I won't get into it, but I don't think the evidence is totally ironclad because there's definitely research that's like, yeah, we looked at social media and didn't really actually change kids' mental health that much. But then there's also there's more papers that say, oh, kids who spend more time on TikTok or on Instagram's really, honestly, Instagram's the bulk of the harm to children and teens. But like, yeah, these studies show like strong correlation between social media usage and like mental health issues. And also we have like longitudinal studies that can make these more causal assertions that like, look, when the social media usage increased, mental health issues also increased in a very causal looking way. But in my opinion, there's more to the chain than that. Because why? Okay, so maybe you can say when the usage increases, mental health issues increase. But the nature of the usage and why the usage increased in the first place also needs to be addressed for you to be able to say, like, that social media is the singular point of what causes all these problems. Did what I say make sense there? I think I was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like what is it? Correlation is not causation type vibes.
It's
Like in the
it's
sense that like oh
yeah.
sorry, go on.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
first.
Basically, what I'm trying to say is, yes, there can be a cause, but like you can't distill the world to two events. You know what I mean? Of like
Yeah.
they use more social media, their mental health went down. I totally believe there's a link there. That is detrimental. But there's also a link before that and after that. And the link isn't actually a straight arrow. It's a very blurry, squiggly arrow. Like this dude, he hates video games. Which, if you play video games and look at the claims he makes at video games, you're like, this dude has no fucking clue what he's talking about. Because he thinks video games are a wholesale waste of time. And yeah, maybe I have an interest in saying they're not, but I think there's real philosophical arguments you can make, and not even abstract arguments you can make about why video games are fruitful and have real benefits to people. Yeah, they can be abused. Maybe in aggregate they're abused, but that doesn't mean we should ban video games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we should ban social media. I think it's something we're going to have to learn to live with. We can't undo it and get rid of it. And let me be clear, I, as a technologist, am always in favor of taking things slow and introducing technology in a measured and tested way. But once it's out there, I'm also a Pandora's box believer. I don't think you can reel things in very easily at all. The government can do things, it can happen, but generally speaking, once it's out there, and it becomes a matter of course correction and learning to live with it, not undoing what happened. I don't think that's almost ever a viable strategy. But he's an absolutist. That's what he believes. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. You look like you're gonna say something, Rich.
Oh, well, two things. One, this guy, if we were back in like the 20s, like Mr. Temperance movement right there, like for sure.
Yeah, I genuinely think because he would be right, right? He'd see the data, he'd go, the alcohol is terrible for your health. It's resulting in deaths. It's resulting in disease. All those things are true. banning alcohol is probably not the solution to those problems because there's reasons people are turning to alcohol. There's reasons
Yeah.
people like alcohol. It's not like you can just snip this one like part of the chain and it's resolved. Um,
And then, oh, sorry, go on.
no, I didn't have much more to say there.
And then I guess the other thing was, yeah, when you were talking about social media, and I'm not sure if he talks about this or not, but one of the things that comes to mind is the concept that, like, maybe people that are spending more time on social media are doing that as an outlet, like, because they're depressed or because they're lacking in real life connections.
Right, right.
So it's like there's a world where you can use it healthily, slash, like, social media versus another, like, something, there could be something more detrimental
Yeah.
out there. There's
Well,
a lot of arguments and things
here's
that
a
we can
big
dive
thing that
into.
I think is a gap. I feel like I'm ragging on this guy too much. He's like a real, he's a smart guy. He says important things. It's not like he's wholesale invalid. But here's what I perceive to be a big gap in his argumentation is the dude is a total classic ass liberal. Um, Big believer in democracy, big believer in like good is what moves like society forwards, and like generates quote unquote value. I think that's why he doesn't like video games. Video games don't generate, GDP looking value. Um, and um, I think if not to be, it's so trite at this point, but not to be like, oh, capitalism is the problem of everything. But I feel like if capitalism is not at least somewhat accounted for in your critique of social media, you're missing a really big piece of the pie, at least in how capitalism is currently manifesting in today's society. I don't think it's everything, but it's a pretty big factor that, if it's changing the way kids are able to spend time with each other, interact with each other, it's no coincidence that using the internet to interact with people is a lot cheaper than doing it in person. Um, these things matter too. He doesn't. I should be careful because I haven't read his body of work. I don't know everything he said, but from what I've seen, it doesn't seem like it's an important part of his calculus. Because I think in his head, these are good things. So they don't need to be critiqued. It's part of his axioms already. Um,
Right. I'm just picturing this guy like being one of our like dedicated listeners,
that'd
and
be
he's like,
so.
"What?
I
Like,
feel
what the
horrible.
hell?"
Well, what's going on in the back of my head is like, man, I hope somebody I who's listening to this isn't like a big fan of his, and I'm just shitting on this dude. Um,
Well, no, if he is, that'd be great. We could have him on as a guest, and we could talk with him about like the nuances and stuff. We could hear his
yeah,
thoughts.
was it Jonathan Haidt? I don't know how to pronounce it. He wrote The Coddling of the American Mind, The Righteous Mind, which is about like how conservatives and like progressives are different. And then his most recent book is called The Anxious Generation. Which again, I don't think
uh,
he's wrong. He's right. The generation is more
yeah.
anxious. It is because of social media. I just think there's more pieces to the puzzle, and the conclusions he draws are I don't agree with. Um,
He's also signaling this in a very loaded way. Like these are very connotative and evocative words.
I would call it
And
it's very Gen X coded.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and so the last thing that I wanted to hit on was you were talking about the differences between why Instagram could be worse than TikTok.
Mm,
And one of the first things that came to my mind, and again, just positing here, but like for Instagram, you're dealing with real friends. People are sharing stories. These are people, a lot of them that you know in real life.
hmm
So, well, meanwhile, with TikTok, sure, you might follow a couple of your friends, but what you're being fed in Reels, TikTok doesn't have stories, does it? Like,
TikTok has a lot of features I'm learning as I use it more. Like, did you know you can make image posts on TikTok? I did not
I did not know
realize
that.
that. It's like an image and it plays like music in the background, and like you can like include like a slideshow of thing. So people make
But
like memes, like if you need to read something or whatever, it's like at your own
oh,
pace.
okay.
But yeah, go
That
on.
makes sense. I guess, but for me, TikTok is more for like reels from like not professional, but like popular content creators.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you have Instagram reels, but on Instagram you also have stories of your friends. And I feel like it's an easier trap to fall into comparing yourself to
Yeah,
your
yeah.
friends' highlights than it is comparing yourself to basically legitimate celebrities on TikTok.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
whether there's TikTok celebrities are real, like, well, I don't want to say real, but like celebrities that would be famous even without the existence of TikTok. Like you kind of like mentally you're just like, oh, these are just famous people doing famous people things. Like you don't always compare yourself to them. But with Instagram stories, you're seeing highlights of your friends that you know have had similar situations, similar backgrounds as you. So when you see their highlights and you're feeling low, you're just like,
Hmm.
oh man, like
Yeah. This is like what a lot of the early negative consequences social media research was about when Facebook was the main platform, the like social comparison that it fuels because oh, there's like an expression or a phrase for something, but it's like you see people's highlights. There's a more elegant way of putting it, but it's like
don't
people
compare
only
your
share their
lowlights to
highlights.
other highlights.
What's that?
Like don't compare your lowlights to others' highlights or
Yeah,
whatever.
some yeah, there's like an expression or some saying like that. But
Yeah.
on social media you get like a very like first it was Facebook, which was like, you're only seeing people's highlights, and then Instagram was like a much more amped up version of that. Um I think the same problems do exist on TikTok. But it's because in my view TikTok is very much an omni platform when it comes to any and all forms of short form like video and I guess now like pictures and stuff. Like anything that is short form you can find on TikTok, whereas like YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels have more there's breadth, but there's like more there's it's more narrow. Versus like I'm sure there's a version if you're like a teenage girl, this is the biggest victim of social media is teenage girls, unfortunately. I'm sure there's a TikTok algorithm for you that just shows you other prettier, richer teenage girls at parties in their sororities. Like the whole Bama Rush thing. Do you know about that?
No, what?
So Alabama, what's the university? Is it Alabama State? Whatever it is, the big
University of
one.
Alabama?
University of Alabama, Roll Tide.
Yeah.
That
Roll
is that
Tide.
there it is. Uh,
You got it.
they have a huge rush culture, right? For their
Yep.
Greek life. Basically, for people who don't know, it's when you're applying to enter into sororities or what are fraternities. Oh my gosh, I was like, what are the those other one? You have to basically audition. I would say for women it's more of an audition than it is for men. For men it's more you have to chill and roll with the punches. For women you have to do those things and be very perfect. um
It's like assessing conformity.
yeah, yeah. And Alabama, as I understand it, has a huge rush culture, and every year, there's become this thing where all, not all, but like a lot of girls document their process going through the Alabama rush culture, specifically sorority girls, girls who want to get into sororities. They take videos of the outfits for the day, their itineraries for all the sororities they're visiting, stuff like that. Um, and so many of them do it that it creates this almost like real time. Um, what's the oh my gosh, I'm blanking. What's the type of reality TV? It's like this real time,
Mm.
real life reality TV show where you're seeing like all these different angles of and these hopes and dreams of these people of these girls who are participating in Bama Rush. And obviously the videos that are going to do the best are the ones where things are going well, where the girl is getting into the top sorority, where her makeup looks amazing, where her outfit is prestigious. That's a big thing, right? Showing off wealth is huge in the Bama Rush culture. Um, it's a lot of a lot of old money people. Um, and yeah, that gets dull to you. Maybe social comparison is kicking in there, but it's not all that TikTok has to offer. TikTok has a lot more to offer than that. Um, but yeah, social comparison's tough. It's a big thing in learning. Social comparison is like a massive impediment to learners because
Hmm.
it really serves no purpose. But it is a massive deterrent for a lot of like healthy and effective learning behaviors because you're like, oh well, I'm not the same as another person, so I don't want to do these things that are good for me. That was vague, but I think you can infer how that would harm your ability to try new things, fail, and stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah. Speaking of social media, speaking of Facebook, I will in post dig up examples of this. Are you familiar with the AI generated Jesus Christs of Facebook? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is this like the like for heaven, skip for hell, and it shows like different like versions of Jesus? Or
So you're getting at the seminal point of this all. So for a
mm,
long time, the Christian contingent of Facebook has been very strong. People have found that if you post about Christianity topics, you get a ton of engagement on Facebook because, it's an evangelical religion, a lot of Christians in the world. Um, so yeah, like you're saying, back in our day, maybe I don't know when this ended, probably still a thing. You would be on Facebook sometimes and in the algorithmic feed it would show you like I guess I didn't see this often, but you saw references to it. Some posts would be like if you love Jesus Christ, ignore if you like embrace Satan or something, like these like cheap ploys to get you to engage, threatening the integrity of your religious belief. um, so there's now an evolution of this, which is so things like Midjourney, Dolly exists nowadays, Stable Diffusion, if you're a nerd. Um, that lets you create varying levels of photorealistic images. And what these engagement trolls have discovered is that you can have. So this is the typical post. My 12-year-old son made this statue of Jesus Christ carved out of wood, and it's a AI generated image of like a young boy standing next to like this 20-foot tall beautiful wooden statue of Jesus Christ. Or this is a very common one that I think um plays on some I guess the correct word for this is problematic tropes, but like this African boy used these plastic bottles to make like a beautiful Jesus Christ sculpture. Or it's not always Jesus, but Jesus is a strong recurring theme. I'll be
right.
plastering the screen with examples of this. Um, and these posts get a ton of great engagement. I think it's a lot of boomers who can't tell that it's AI. I think it's a lot of bots. Um, but the AI world got very upset about this, I guess, and then started making jokes about it afterwards, after the initial knockback. But yeah, Rich, I wish I had examples for you. You'll see them after the podcast, but I was
I
just
mean,
curious if you knew
I can
about this
picture this.
phenomenon.
No, yeah. I honestly, so I don't really follow the AI world that closely, and I
Hmm.
definitely have seen. I scroll Facebook mostly. This is my kind of guilty pleasure. I don't know if
Nice.
I've
I'm glad
talked to
you're
you
on
about
Facebook because
this.
I haven't touched that in years. But I want to know
Okay,
what's
I
up.
yeah. So I use Facebook for two different things.
Uh-huh.
One is buy nothing groups, which if people in the audience, I don't know if you're aware of these groups. They're awesome. Basically, if
Yeah.
you
Yep.
ever want to get rid of something or you're looking for stuff, there are these groups where people, instead of selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace, they'll just give stuff away.
Hmm.
Like I've gotten an espresso. I've given away 10-pound dumbbells. Like, and it's funny because if you're in the groups for long enough, like people will give away some pretty niche stuff. So I've seen a miniaturized desk, USB powered inflatable arm flailing tube man both be gifted and received. Now, I think 4 times at this point.
4 times?
So
Wait, from like
yeah,
it's like the same one between different
yeah,
people?
yeah,
That is
because
so
they're
funny.
hyper localized. You're only allowed to be in
Yeah.
one in your
Right, right.
specific neighborhood. And if you live in a metropolitan city, you'll have access to them. I don't know how it is. Suburbs are probably a bit more loosey, like a bit more loose, but that's awesome. I love looking through those, not just because I'm looking or I have stuff to give away, although that is my go-to when I need or want to get rid of something, but you just get to see a lot of really interesting stuff. And sometimes you're like, oh man, that person's giving away like an e-bike. Like, what the heck? Like, it kind of makes me feel good
Mhm.
about humanity a little bit, seeing people like get rid of stuff that they could easily sell because they want to contribute to their community. It makes me like, it's like next, it's not next door, but like, I don't really engage in a lot of online tied to my local community stuff. And I like that.
Yeah.
I like them.
No, I
Um,
yeah. It's good. It's an interesting, surprisingly rare example of like legitimate social capital enabled by the internet. Like
totally.
has super local implications, and it wouldn't have been as easy to do before social media and stuff.
And then my other guilty pleasure, and this is where we're talking about us being fallible. This is one of my many fallibilities. I've started joining Facebook closed like private groups for like people dating 50 plus. Like
Really? Okay,
yeah,
that's
oh,
so
it's
funny.
so good.
Not that
It's so
there should be
good.
mocked, but I'm sure it's fascinating.
No, it's like I get to see a culture entirely different than my own because I'm watching 50, 60 some year olds putting their faces and just their information out onto the internet and just like seeing how people react to the top like the most popular posts
Uh-huh,
versus like
uh-huh.
less popular ones. The guys in general tend to be a lot more problematic. Like when they like if a woman posts a photo that like she looks pretty, I think a lot of the guys get jealous and they'll comment stuff and they'll be like, "Oh, like why are you like they'll say like basically like she's probably single because she didn't want to settle down." Or I don't know.
Dude,
Like,
that's so funny. These like
dude,
weird generational like
yeah. This is my you were
yeah.
talking about your Reddit wormhole. This is my Facebook wormhole. It's
Yeah.
awesome. Another favorite is when people will post for because I'm also in ones where they're like 30, 40 year olds. 60 year olds will be posting like controlling moms will be posting on behalf of their sons. They're like, "Oh, my son Abraham is 39. He lives in like Maryland and he's looking." And I'm just like, I want to know all about Abraham. And
That's
does he
so
still live
good.
with you? Like, what's the deal here? Like, yeah. So that's why I like Facebook because you cannot get that anywhere else.
Yeah, that's actually I've been thinking I should interact with older people more cuz it's hard on the internet. There's just not a lot of older people in like the typical like under 40 spaces, you know? Like
Yeah.
you're it's pretty siloed. And older people are cool, right? Like the average person is pretty chill, but I just don't have access to that like lens on life. Um, but it'd be interesting. My girlfriend is in like a band kind of for basically she takes like music lessons, guitar lessons, but the way the lessons are run is like you're performing with other people. And so they perform together, and they also have like sometimes they'll do like live performances outside of their lessons. Um, she is the youngest member by a significant margin. I think everybody else is at least 60 or older. Um, but they're all super chill. They're like cool people. Like I chatted with them and stuff. And I was like, I should find a way to expose myself to older people more. Actually, segue. This is hyper relevant because I'm about to do it. Like in the next 30 minutes, I'm gonna do it. Why update? We're trying pickleball today. Today is
Let's
the day.
go.
We're diving in. And there
Fastest
are
growing
older
sport in
people in the
America.
pickleball space, so that can be my exposure. Um,
Pickleball is so fun. I
you,
enjoy
you've
it.
you've how much have you played it?
Only like a couple times, but I
Yeah,
mean,
here or
I
there.
play tennis and stuff, but like
Yeah. Your family's
I
big tennis family.
big tennis family. But yeah, pickleball is great. You can pick it up really quickly. We have a mutual friend, and he has a pickleball set. And so I've played in
Mm-hmm.
his courts before. It's really fun.
Yeah. I've never played it before. It looks pretty cool. It looks pretty easy to get started on. I like racket sports a lot, but I've never been like particularly good at any of them. But I think the intersection between strategy and tactics, I think is very interesting in racket sports, especially. All sports have that dichotomy of like your ability to execute versus your plan, but racket sports, the like pace that they're played at, the pace that like the ball or the birdie moves is in this sweet spot of like it's like very system one, very reflexive, but just a hint of system two. Um, I think it's very interesting. It reminds me of fighting games a lot for video games.
Mm.
And I do have to say, because pickleball happens pretty soon, we do need to wrap pretty soon, too. So, do you have any quick couple minute closing thoughts or anything? I might have one thing.
Do I have anything? No, you go ahead. You take it.
Yeah. Okay. The one thing I wanted to say, apparently the theme of this episode was fallibility, as we've said. That was not planned, by the way. That just is how things shook. One other thing I want to say is I can and will be wrong about things all the time. Everybody will be. The TikTok substituting social media usage is a very inconsequential example of that. But I might say there's a study when in reality it was a tweet I read or something. Not something that I would do intentionally, of course. If I'm not trying to misportray information, but your wires get crossed. I don't have like the best recall in the world. But I'm to be clear, I'm trying to share genuine information. I'm never trying to sugar things up and be disingenuous. But it happens, right? Emotions cause us to be disingenuous sometimes. Forgetting things causes us to be. I just want to say this, not because I think people are like, what is the expression, baiting, holding on to every breath. You know what I'm talking about? Not that people are like looking to me as like a
Yeah.
source of like valuable information, but just that I think this is how you should see all people. You just should assume they're gonna say things that aren't true, whether they intend to or not. I think it applies to me. I know Tom Scott has made a video about this. He's gotten facts wrong in his videos, and those are scripted research videos. Off the cuff, you're gonna expect you gotta expect some stuff to not be very
Yeah.
sound. Just tossing in that disclaimer at the end of the episode.
If
Yeah.
you're the type of person that like were to like yeah, if you were to go to a dinner party and you were to be fact checking every single person and every single thing that comes up in casual conversation, you would not be the most popular person. Not
Yeah,
you,
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
this theoretical straw man I invented.
Yeah. No, but you're right. Yeah, like you just I don't know exactly the point I was trying to make there. It seemed in the theme of fallibility, and we didn't talk about like factual flaws quite yet. But yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, humans not perfect. Doing our best. It is what it is. Had a good pod today. It did have a nice relaxed vibe, I felt. So I'm glad we achieved that. All right.
Yep.
Goodbye now. You gotta say it
Peace.
too.
Peace. Goodbye now.
Peace. No, you have to say goodbye now. We're gonna run it back.
All right.
Richard, when I make that last cut in the timeline, it's always immediately after you say goodbye now. So I need it to anchor it. All right. Goodbye now.
Goodbye now.